The Montana skies were lit up Wednesday morning when a meteorite raced across the sky. Where did it fall? Where do we look for it? What are we looking for? How do you know if you found a meteorite? How do you get it looked at and find out if it's for real or not? Who owns it? The landowner? The finder? The state? Did it fall on public land or private land? Are you a private landowner and do you need to watch this? What are the laws about finding, buying, selling meteorites in Montana? What's it worth? And just for fun, let's compare this to other meteorites that have been found in Montana that I bet you don't know very much about. All right, so let's get right into this. My name is Allison, PrairieGirlRocks. I am one of the very few female International Meteorite Collectors Association members. My IMCA number is 6283. I'm also a very proud member of Topher Spin Meteorites. I'm a very active member on that YouTube channel. Please check that out. The motto over there is meteorites for sale, education for free. We put out a ton of free educational content learning more about meteorites. So if that's something you're interested in, please check that out. I am a proud born and raised Montanan. So I really want to address some of these questions and issues that we might have here in Montana. And I really want to set the record straight because in today's day of AI and social media, it's all way too easy to get misinformed. And I don't want that to happen to us. We know that Wednesday morning, a meteorite entered the atmosphere somewhere over southern Alberta, heading southeast into hopefully the state of Montana. All of the reports have streamed into the AMS, or the American Meteor Society. And those reports are put together and we get a trajectory. So based on that trajectory and the information that we have, we still have a huge chunk of land that we could be looking for this thing in. What we see and what we know. What we saw was a meteorite coming through the sky. Like I say, we know about which direction it's going based on all of the reports that we've received, and what we see is the meteorite burning through the atmosphere. And then what we don't see and what a lot of people don't know about is it's exactly like doing a belly flop into a pond. Our atmosphere does a really good job protecting us from these violent impacts, much in the same way that a belly flop stings and burns your belly and stops you moving right now. They burn as they come through the atmosphere because they are moving fast and our atmosphere is resisting them. Well, they eventually slow enough that they stop burning visibly, but they continue to move through the atmosphere in what is known as dark flight. And so we need to take into consideration when we look for this meteorite that they can travel in dark flight for hundreds of miles sometimes, depending on how shallow or deep the trajectory was, the entry angle was. So let's not forget about dark flight when we're trying to decide where to look for this. It could be as near to the mountains as like Choteau. So I'm encouraging anybody from like Choteau, Augusta area up to like maybe the Havre area, back down to like the Great Falls area, and maybe like all the way out to like the Glasgow area, and then back down to like the Billings area. I know that's a huge kind of swath of property there, but that's, I believe at this moment in time where we should be looking for this. I know that's a lot of places to look, but you know what? We have a lot of boots on the ground here in Montana. We're farmers, we're ranchers, we're out checking cows, we're out moving equipment, we're opening and closing gates. We are in the middle of hunting season, if you're out bird hunting or deer hunting or recreating, and you never know, you might just be checking your mail and be lucky enough to find one of these. So what are we looking for? Like I said, by the time these meteorites are hitting the ground, they've already gone through dark flight. They're usually not hot to the touch, despite what Hollywood would like you to believe. They don't come smashing in, and they're not fiery and explosive, and they don't, make a big impact hole. Science proves and science says that these are not hot, and they're not burning, and they're not punching big holes in the earth as they're landing. By the time they are landing, they're going at about the speed of a golf ball. It it isn't necessarily a gentle touch every time. You know, if it's a big enough piece, it's got enough terminal velocity to maybe punch a hole through a roof or dent a hood of a car, or maybe even punch through a car. But again, we're not talking about impact craters that you can fit your car inside of, or even fit your couch inside of, or that are going to decimate your house or anything. We're looking for small pieces that maybe even just gently rested on top of the ground. If it was a heavy iron, a big heavy iron, we could maybe expect to see half of it lodged into the ground or something like that. But we're looking for freshly burned, fusion crusted pieces of stone that look very out of place, unlike other pieces around. Those are what we're looking for, and that's where we're looking for it. So you think you have found something. And how do you know? How do you find out if it's a real meteorite or not? You'd think if you ask somebody that question, a lot of times your answer is you can get a university to look at it. In Montana, you might be lucky if you can get a geologist, a really good geologist, to say, that looks like a meteorite to me, but they aren't going to be able to really tell you what kind of meteorite it is or what the value of the meteorite is. So that kind of information needs to come from a certain university, and those certain universities do not look at rocks for free. So it's not that they don't want to help you, it's just that they can't. So there are only a handful of universities across the United States and Canada that do have the equipment and the personnel to tell you what kind of meteorite you have, and then therefore determine the value. Who owns the rock? The finder? The landowner? The state?
If you own a piece of property, right? You own the sand and the water. Nobody owns the water. It's God's water.
That's important to know. Wouldn't you like to know? Okay, so let's get into that really quick. It really depends if it's private land or public land. Private land is easiest to tackle, so we'll talk about that first. Private land, the landowner owns the rock. The landowner can sell the rock to you without a permit required. You can buy a rock from a landowner without a permit required. Public lands, let's talk about that next. If you are going to use public lands, you need a conservation license. And that's no big deal. It's not a lot of money, and that money goes right back into paying the people who take care of those lands or taking care of those lands. So it's not a terrible thing. Get yourself a conservation license. There is a new rule in Montana. You should have a rockhound permit too. And it's really easy to get, really affordable. You can get one for the whole family, or you can get one for yourself. The state actually does own the meteorite on public lands. They're gracious enough to let you take rocks as long as you don't sell them. And as long as you don't take hundreds and hundreds of pounds of rocks. We're not talking about graveling your driveway off of public lands. I think there's a 10-pound limit mostly in most states. That applies across most states. So yes, you can hobby collect off of public land for yourself and yourself only. Now, if you find a meteorite in Montana on public land and you want to sell it, you need to get a permit from the state to do that. So again, I can help you through that process if you need help. It always comes back around, right, to what's it worth. So what is it worth? That depends a lot on what kind of meteorite it is. And so again, we are going to need to go back to that step where do you take your rock to get looked at, and that handful of universities that have the equipment and the people who know how to determine that, who can scientifically tell you what kind of meteorite this is. And that's going to be step one in determining the value. As a resident of Montana, born and raised, I want to see this meteorite get found just as much as you guys do. And a quick couple of facts. It's been 13 years since the last meteorite from Montana has been brought to science, and there are only 7 in total. So let's make it number 8, and let's start that ticker over. Like 13 years is way too long. So what are these meteorites and where were they found? They are 2 dot, found in 1999 by an elk hunter who had never seen or held a meteorite in his entire life. And he had stopped on a hill to have some lunch, and he sat there and thought, gosh, this rock looks like nothing I have ever seen before in my life. Just looks a little weird. So he hauled it off the side of the mountain with him, and through whatever process of the steps that needed to be taken, it was brought to science and classified. It is Montana's only stony meteorite. There isn't a whole lot of it. And because there's not a lot of it, because it's Montana's only stony meteorite, meteorites come in 3 main flavors: stonies, irons, and stony irons, also known as chondrites, irons, and pallasites. Stony meteorites are not as valuable as things like pallasites and irons. They are more commonly found than any other kind of meteorite. So that's the kind of meteorite we're most likely going to find in Montana if we find a meteorite. However, it's the only one that's been found here, and it's a neat meteorite. So the value on that one, just a little less than, let's say, Roundup, which was found in 1990. Roundup is even smaller than 2 Dot, and it's a 3AB iron, which is pretty neat. I mean, it's a little more unusual, on the unusual side. You can see there that the metals are showing a coarse Widmanstätten pattern. So it's not just a solid chunk of iron. We can see the differentiation between the metals in irons. Again, the low total known weight of these and the types are determining the price. So like I say, 2 Dot, it was expensive enough. Roundup, again, it's hard to get. There's not a lot of it. A little bit more expensive. Stonies, the first kind of meteorite I showed you, you can buy a unclassified common stony meteorite for just a couple bucks a gram. You know, not too much, but when they're classified and they have a place name and they have a story to them, then that drives the price up just a little bit, which brings us to our next meteorite. The one that's most recently added to the METBULL, or the Meteorological Bulletin Database, the ones that have been classified by science, is the Shoto-Pallasite. The Shoto-Pallasite was found in 2011. And it was found at an estate sale and was used as a doorstop for many years on the family property. I think it was used to prop the shop door open. This is a very rare meteorite to begin with. Pallasites are the least common type of meteorite you find outside of things like lunar and Martian meteorites. Those are extremely, extremely rare. However, this is a very special pallasite. It's an ungrouped pallasite, which means it's unlike all of the rest of the pallasites that fit into a nice little category. This one's it's different. It doesn't fit in. And because of that, this is an extremely expensive meteorite. There are very few ungrouped pallasites. So the type, again, has determined the value of that meteorite. That was very expensive per gram. And again, there's not a lot of it. It's very hard to get. There's even less of that than there were of the first 2. In fact, I think like 14 pounds in total. And considering the metal composition in that, that's not a big stone. So we've compared the Montana meteorites that we know we have. That's 3 of the 7. The other ones were found in 1953, 1936, 1899, 1975. They were found in Harlowtown, Illinois Gulch, Livingston, Lombard. So if you live in any of those places, you may accidentally find a piece of an already known and classified meteorite. And if you live outside of Shoto anywhere, boy, definitely be looking for that Shoto-Pallasite. It's extremely special. So what about this one that just fell? It would be Montana's first witnessed fall if we find it and can prove that it's connected to all of the video and reports and witness falls, that drives the price up. If it hit something, if it landed on your barn, if it hit something man-made, that drives the price up. So there's lots of things that can determine the value of the meteorite. And step one is finding out what kind it is, because that is gonna matter. Step two is finding out if there's anything significant or special about it. Was it witnessed coming through the atmosphere? Was it witnessed? Is it a fresh fall? Did we find it fast? Did we find it before Earth's atmosphere and environment had a chance to start altering that in any way? That's gonna drive up the price. There's a lot of discussion to be had after we find it. After you find it, I find it, we find it, someone finds it. What are we going to do? And so we got to follow some of these steps. We've got to, first of all, find out where we can take it, and is it worth taking? Is it a meteor wrong? Even though we see them falling all the time, sometimes they fall, and let's talk about this. This is very important. Sometimes they fall in a national park or a national forest or a reservation or protected land, closed private land, and you can't go look for them. You just can't. They belong to the state. They belong to the future generations. They stay where they are. There are places that you just cannot go hunt for them, and so a lot of times we see them, we catch them on our cameras, we report them to the American Meteor Society. That's an important step. Don't forget to do that if you see a fireball. And we can't go get it. And on a greater scale of things, we see fireballs every day that are entering our atmosphere and they fall into the ocean, and we cannot go get them out of the ocean. We just don't have that technology to do that. So lots and lots of meteorites fall to the earth every day, and very few of them are actually found or can actually be found. And the ones that can are very hard to find. So I want to keep a realistic, tone to all of this, that you're going to find a ton of meteor wrongs before you find a meteorite. And if you find a meteorite as an elk hunter sitting down to have your lunch, that's an extremely rare exception, but we'll take it, So again, if you think you have something that's worth looking at, leave a comment in the chat. I'll do a pretty good job answering that. If you live outside of Shoto and you think you found something, if you live outside Two Dot or Roundup and you think you found something, please share a picture with me. My email is in the description. I will have a few of my expert friends from Topher Spin Meteorites. Again, go there, subscribe, like their channel, get more information from the greater mass of experts rather than just myself. So a few of them have agreed to help me look at your rocks if you think you've found something, and give a second and a third opinion. But we're not going to bother all of them with all of our rocks. There is no school to go to learn meteorites, by the way. If you want to become an expert in meteorites, if you want to be the guys that work at these certain universities that classify meteorites, you have to do a lot of school in a lot of different things. You have to learn geology, you have to learn biology, chemistry, a lot of different things. And so even on a hobby level where somebody can get good enough to even just visually look at a rock and say, that I do believe that is a meteorite and here's why, that takes a lot of years and a lot of dollars in a lot of cases. Serious interactions only, please, on my email, but it is in the description, and the link to Topher Spin Meteorites is in the description. So again, I'm not going to give you their names directly until we need to do that. We're not going to bother these professionals and people who, are already bombarded with a load of real science and real meteorites that are honestly coming and going every day. They're already, like I say, backlogged. Like when you want to get a meteorite classified, it honestly takes a long time because there is so many in front of you that are still waiting for that special technology and that special equipment and those highly trained individuals who do that. So I think we've kind of covered all of our bases. 7 meteorites in Montana, 13 years ago was the last one. Let's make it number 8. And let's do so ethically. Let's do so with a little bit of education underneath of our belts, and good luck, everybody. I hope we can find it, and stay tuned and watch more Prairie Girl Rocks for more adventures here out on the Montana prairie and see what we get up to. And maybe we'll have an update on this meteorite in the near future, and maybe we won't. That's the reality of it. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. If you like this video, please subscribe, share it with anybody you think also might be interested in it, and we'll see you again all real soon.